Good afternoon, and welcome to the Scaringi Law Lunch Break. This is your time of the day to learn about the law while you enjoy your lunch. The nation is focused on the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Thursday featuring Judge Brett Kavanaugh and his accuser, Dr. Christine Blase Ford. At the conclusion of the hearing, Republicans agreed to a one-week delay in the vote pending an FBI investigation. The Republican majority employed and utilized a sexual assault crimes prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell, to conduct the examination of Dr. Ford. Attorney Mitchell just released a memorandum containing her findings. Here are some of the key points made by the prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell. Number one, Dr. Ford has not offered a consistent account of when the alleged assault happened. Her explanations went from the mid-1980s to the early 1980s, then a crossing out of early, and then finally to the summer of 1982. Importantly, Dr. Ford refused to turn over her therapy records to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and those records could have shed some light on this important detail of the time frame of the alleged incident. Number two, Dr. Ford has struggled to identify Judge Brett Kavanaugh by name as her assailant. It took Dr. Ford over 30 years to name her accuser publicly, and it was only after he was announced as on the short list as Trump's nominee to the U.S. Supreme Court. Her therapy notes reveal she failed to identify Brett Kavanaugh as her assailant in 2012 and 2013. Number three, when speaking with her husband, Dr. Ford changed her description of the incident to become less specific. Dr. Ford's description to her husband went from sexual assault to physical abuse, a big difference. Number four, Dr. Ford has no memory of key details of the night in question, details that could help corroborate her account. Most importantly, Dr. Ford does not remember how she got home from the party. It's a 7 or an 8-mile walk as the crow flies from the area around the country club where Dr. Ford says the house was located to her own home. But she has no recollection of how she got home, a glaring failure of her memory. Number five, Dr. Ford's account of the alleged assault has not been corroborated by anyone she identified as having attended the party, including her best friend at the time. This is another very damning fact for Dr. Ford. It's understandable how the alleged perpetrators and their alleged accomplices would not be able to recall being at the party, but her best friend? Not credible. Number six, Dr. Ford has not offered a consistent account of the alleged assault. Number seven, Dr. Ford has struggled to recall important recent events relating to her allegations, and her testimony regarding recent events raises further questions about her memory. Dr. Ford testified that she sent to the Washington Post either her therapy notes or her own summary of them. She doesn't remember which, but in any event, she refused to share those notes or the summary or the record with the Senate Judiciary Committee that was investigating the alleged incident. She also claims she wanted to remain anonymous, but contacted the Washington Post, her congresswoman, and her U.S. senator and gave detailed description of the alleged sexual assault. That's not remaining anonymous. Number eight, Dr. Ford's description of her psychological impact, or of the psychological impact of the events, raises serious questions. She maintains she suffers from anxiety, claustrophobia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The date of the hearing was delayed because the committee was informed of her symptoms, that her symptoms prevent her from flying. But Dr. Ford agreed during her testimony that she flies fairly frequently for her hobbies and work. Who of you listening to this lunch break video fly frequently as a result of your hobbies? Dr. Ford does. She flies the mid-Atlantic at least once a year to visit her family. She's flown to Hawaii, French Polynesia, and Costa Rica, among others. She also obviously flew to Washington, D.C. for the hearing. Those are very long flights and belie her credibility and her truth and honesty that she can't fly as a result of her symptoms from this alleged assault 36 years ago. Also note that her attorneys apparently refused to inform her that the committee was willing to travel to California to conduct its interview of her, or she didn't know that. She somehow is not aware of a significant fact that the committee wanted to go to California according to alleviate any stress the flying would cause on her, but she didn't even know that. How does she not remember or recollect a fundamental detail about these committee hearings that was reported throughout the national news media? And number 9, the activities of congressional Democrats and Dr. Ford's attorneys likely affected Dr. Ford's account for obvious reasons. Democrats announced before the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh that they would oppose, by all means necessary, any of Trump's nominees. And also, Dr. Ford's attorneys, who she hired at the recommendation of Democrats, are resistance attorneys. They're on record stating they're going to resist Donald Trump and his agenda by any means necessary. Well, this is one of those means. The conclusion reached by the prosecutor after a 9-hour involvement in the hearing and significant amount of time examining Dr. Ford under oath, the conclusion of the prosecutor is, in the legal context, here's my bottom line. A he said, she said case is incredibly difficult to prove, but this case is even weaker than that. Dr. Ford identified other witnesses to the event, and those witnesses either refuted her allegations or failed to corroborate them, including her best friend at the time. For the reasons discussed below, I do not think that a reasonable prosecutor would bring this case based upon the evidence before the committee, nor do I believe that this evidence is sufficient to satisfy even the preponderance of the evidence standard, which is a lower burden of proof than the burden of proof required in a criminal context. Wow, this is a pretty explosive memorandum from the prosecutor who interviewed Dr. Christine Blase Ford. Apparently, she lacks sufficient evidence to substantiate these charges and lacks credibility. I'll keep you posted as the FBI investigation into this matter continues and as we get closer to the date when the U.S. Senate in full will vote on the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. That's about all the time we have today for the Scaringi Law Lunch Break. Thanks for listening and enjoy your lunch.